From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Chris again. I swear I have an actual life, but I was just sitting here drinking and thinking about your podcast. You may have done this, I don't know, but just a topic headline, did MKUltra make the Unabomber? You can make an argument that it did. Kaczynski was definitely psychologically, I don't want to say tortured, but yeah, tortured by the company. Also, yeah, like the manifesto is like, if it was written by anybody else and a little less extreme, it would be groundbreaking, important work. I think Kaczynski is a terrible person who shouldn't be lauded as a champion of anything, but he's definitely no idiot. I don't know what compelled him to blow people up anonymously. It's a cowardice, terroristic act, and I'm very glad he is rotting away in a Supermax in Florence or Terre Haute, but yeah, maybe that's like some blowback from MKUltra. So yeah, thanks again. I work in Bay Area tech. I do quality assurance. I'm not some tin hat loony who, yeah, I know I called too much. Sorry.
Never apologize.
Nope.
No, never apologize. And thanks for the voicemail. And we believe that you have a life, Chris. We do. We know that this is only a small portion of it, and we're lucky that you devoted it to us and bringing up this topic, which I think is super interesting. There's apparently a lot of controversy around this Discovery Channel documentary that came out about the Unabomber a while back. The Unabomber himself, Theodore Kaczynski, wrote a letter kind of debunking personally this notion that is put forth in the documentary. This article from Deadline from January 7th, 2018, headline, Retired FBI Agent, the Unabomber, and I agree, TV series on him is inaccurate. Specifically referring to MKUltra, Kaczynski has this to say. From several people I've received letters concerning that Discovery Channel series about me, and it's clear from their letters that the Discovery series is even worse than most of the other media stories about me. In fact, the greater part of it is pure fiction. Among other things, they apparently passed on to their viewers the tale that through the agency of Harvard professor H.A. Murray, I was repeatedly tortured as part of the MKUltra mind control program conducted by the CIA. As we all know, MKUltra is a program, this is not Kaczynski speaking, where it, as like a kind of a response to this notion that our enemies were developing mind control drugs, things like liquid THC and LSD and other, mind-altering substances were given to people, often anonymously, or like basically people were like dosed and they were observed and to see how it would affect them. Or, for example, there are instances of people being dosed with liquid THC and then tried to see how loose their lips were as far as like, secrets, agency secrets and things like that. There's a story about one particular agent that was involved in this program named George White, who dosed a mafia member with this THC by injecting into cigarettes and got him to get pretty loosey-goosey about stuff that would have had him killed, as a member of, La Cosa Nostra. So interesting stuff there. But yeah, back to Kaczynski. He says, the truth is that in the course of the Murray study, there was one and only one unpleasant experience. It lasted about half an hour, and I could not have been described as torture, even in the loosest sense of the word. Mostly the Murray study consisted of interviews and the filling out of pencil and paper personality tests. The CIA was not involved. Since people may find it difficult to believe that the media would broadcast such a conglomeration of outright lies, I'm sending you herewith a copy of an article by FBI agent Greg Stejskal, in which Stejskal claims, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that name, I think the J might be silent, that the greater part of the Discovery series is fiction. Stejskal's purpose is to defend the honor of the FBI, not to tell the truth about Ted Kaczynski. In fact, not all of his statements about me are strictly accurate. That's interesting. But the fact that Discovery lied about the FBI investigation should make it easier for people to believe that they lied about me too.
Mm-hmm. And that refers to the Murray experiment.
Correct. But, there's a lot of reporting out there that specifically, connects these experiments with MKUltra and the CIA. There's even an article in the Atlantic from 2000 called Harvard and the Making of the Unabomber, a series of purposefully brutalizing psychological experiments may have confirmed Theodore Kaczynski's still forming belief in the evil of science while he was in college. Now, MKUltra or no, whatever these experiments may be, and perhaps he's downplaying it due to, PTSD or who knows. I mean, you can rewrite your own narrative in many ways if memories are painful. I think MKUltra or not, certainly if these experiments were psychologically damaging, that could play. But the Atlantic article does specifically, connect it to MKUltra. And it would appear that claim is specific to the Discovery documentary series. There's this great article in the Atlantic from 2000 talking about these experiments and going into detail about them and kind of making the thesis that these could have poisoned Kaczynski against science, which is something that he would write about in his manifesto. But nowhere in this Atlantic piece does it mention anything about MKUltra. It seems like that's very specifically something that this Discovery documentary seems to have gotten wrong, at least according to Kaczynski himself and someone with experience on the matter from within the Bureau. So, what do you guys think? Is this something that you'd heard of before? This is the first for me.
Yeah, I've heard this pretty often over the years. There's actually there's a podcast by a friend of the show, Lowell Brillante, called Prodigy, which dives into a deep and really well done exploration of Kaczynski's formative years, because he was very young when he went to Harvard. At the time of the Murray experiments, he was only about 17 years old. These were humiliation experiments. I think I know where the conflation begins too, at least on the Discovery documentaries part. So the Murray experiments are named after Henry Murray. And part of these experiments, in a very high level, were to, quote, evaluate an officer's candidacy for positions in the U.S. military. The reason people are maybe stringing some red string conspiracy yarn between the MKUltra CIA experiments and the Murray experiments is that Murray himself worked for the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, during World War II, which a lot of us will recognize as the predecessor of the CIA here in the U.S. So maybe from that point, I can see how it might be easy to confuse the two, but the OSS is not the CIA, and the fact that Murray worked for the OSS during World War II does not necessarily mean that narrative of the CIA financing this is correct. But there is a tantalizing thing here. There's another podcast on our network. Since I'm doing plugs, there's another podcast on our network called The Control Group, which is a dramatization of the way some of these experiments occurred. People who were conducting things related to MKUltra, academics, professors, researchers, and so on, may not have necessarily known where the money was coming from. It may have been coming through front groups. So it's also possible that there could have been something that was later discovered to be part of the overall genre of this kind of unethical experimentation, and that it occurred without the knowledge of not just the participants, but the experimenters themselves. So, but you're right, Noel. It is a very important distinction. So Kaczynski was in those Murray experiments, which subjected people to a lot of psychological stress. And again, that's during a formative year, but that's not the same thing as sort of the CIA Monty Burns style wringing its hands and saying, yes, we'll build a terrorist. But this, I mean, I think it's an important distinction. It's also, I mean, what do you think? It feels to me that it is a pretty valid and plausible argument to make that this experience impacted someone who already had a vulnerable mind, but did it cause them to perpetrate the acts that became the Unabomber? I don't know. That might be a bridge too far.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's say it was MKUltra, and and this was specifically being dosed with LSD. I mean, I think something that we've seen. Anyone that's been around people that have experimented with psychedelics know that it brings out stuff that's already kind of there. It's the same way like people that are drunk kind of, just they become like a more extroverted version of themselves, or they go a little further maybe with their thoughts, or they take things a little further, but it's not like just putting things in. It's not implanting you with ideas. The ideas are already there. It just kind of like helps bring them out a little more. So that's true of LSD and a lot of drugs, stimulants or what have you. So to me, the idea of weed made me do it or LSD made me do it, I don't buy that, because to me, it's like it's something that's already latent within you and that it can kind of just like bring out. But I don't really buy into the idea that it can create a monster. But since we're plugging things, I'll also say that iHeart Originals, the iHeart Originals slate is coming out with a show at the end of this month, I believe, called Operation Midnight Climax. That's sort of it's a nonfiction dramatization, I guess, of the MKUltra experiment, specifically through the eyes and the lens of this character, George White. And I had the pleasure of being able to narrate the thing. I've never really done that before, so that should be hitting your feeds soon. And it's very well written, a really great team behind that. So also beautifully sound designed by our buddy Julian in New York. And check that out if you want to hear a little more of like kind of a inside, the mind of someone that's actually doing this stuff and dosing unsuspected people with these drugs, just to see what happens.
I love that cup, Ben.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Yeah, dude, definitely listen to that show. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to hear it. Another thing to bring up here. I really didn't know much about MKUltra connected to Kaczynski, but I am fascinated with his timeline and his trajectory. And as you guys have been talking about, some of his thoughts in his manifesto, it's stuff that's worth reading in some messed up way. Some of the thoughts are very fascinating, just as our caller Chris mentioned. The timeline with him also in the late 60s there, when he moves out to Berkeley after he gets his degrees, from Harvard and then I believe University of Michigan. He's out there in like 67, I think. And that's around the time when officially the known Zodiac killings were happening. Just putting it out there. Maybe there's even more to Kaczynski than just MKUltra.
Why not?
There's a series of 3 books that you can read from an author we met named Mark Hewitt, that are all about how Kaczynski is the Zodiac.
Well, that's the thing when you don't have, as you know, Matt, from some of your previous excellent work, that's the thing when you don't have a lot of emergent evidence, you're kind of, the speculation thrives, right? And we tend to look at concurrent events and see whether the ostensibly unrelated may give us a new perspective on the problem we are solving. So it doesn't seem like his style, though, right? Which is the primary argument against it.
Well, one of the arguments Mark puts forward is that it evolved. So in 67, again, according to Mark, when he's in Berkeley as a professor there, right, which is right near Benicia and Vallejo, where the confirmed killings occurred in San Francisco is just across a bridge. He allegedly, according to this author, those killings were like his beginning, his warming up, essentially. And then when things got too hot, he escaped to, God, I want to say Montana. I think it's Montana, right? Isn't that where he ended up? That's where he built a cabin.
That's right.
He goes to Montana because things get too hot in San Francisco and that area for the Zodiac, and begins another version of a death campaign, basically. Anyway,
well, this is one I would want to hear from the listeners. What do you think, folks?
Yeah, I'd love to know what you think. He's clearly a brilliant person, right? You can't go to Harvard, get a degree, then go to the University of Michigan and get a master's and doctorate in math and not be able to put things together very, very well. There could be some screws loose, though.